Hello, welcome to the what is this? The eighth stream of the Secure the Bag Book Club. I am Brooke Brown. I am your esteemed um, facilitator. I'm not trying to position myself as an expert, but I am someone who is very enthusiastic and very knowledgeable. And I created this book club so that we could come together and talk about acquiring assets. Why assets? Assets provide income generating uh, value. Does things like add diversification to your portfolio. It in some ways adds protection to your wealth and so much more. And it's just fun to do. It's fun to like acquire things and get some value out of it and stuff like that. So we talk about all the important things that we need to know about different ways of acquiring different kinds of assets. Last month in October, we talked about intellectual property, and we covered the book You Are an IP Company by Dr. Carrie Oberbrunner and Catherine Rubino Esquire. And then this month, we are covering The Art of Buying Art by Alan Bamberger. So those are the two books that we've covered so far. And I'm just really excited to be just wrapping up the final few chapters of this book, The Art of Buying Art, and to kind of get you guys feedback about, how the book club is going. Are you enjoying the streams? Oh, that's my note that it's time to start. Excellent. It's time. It's 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I wanted to jump on a little bit earlier so that I could get that, introduction off the way. But yeah, so glad you guys are here. A little bit of housekeeping. I can't see who is participating live unless you post something in the chat. So go ahead and shout yourself out. Let me know that you're here, maybe where you're streaming from. Would love to know all that good stuff. And the chat will be on replay when you see it later if you aren't watching it live. So there you go. Let's see. Okay, so as I mentioned, we've covered two books so far. You can see the difference in the size of the book. So it may be a big book, maybe a smaller book, but we get it done in 4 weeks' time, and we get a lot of value out of it. I really appreciate it. This is just kind of my first thoughts about the finale of the book that we're featuring this month. It really delivered. It did not gatekeep. In my opinion, this was a very authoritative volume of information that was just put out the case for how to successfully buy art that you'll appreciate, art that is maybe valuable in the marketplace, and ways that you can avoid common pitfalls when you're first starting out as a novice, as a beginner, when it comes to buying art. Okay, and I'm going to touch on a couple of things about that as well when it comes to just kind of my interpretation of how the book finished and all that good stuff. So one of the things that I wanted to talk about that I felt like progressed in the book in the last two sections of the book, right? In particularly when it talks about the chapter 22, negotiate the buy, right? And a little bit before then, when it's talking about the chapter on evaluating the asking price and things like that, what we have to keep in mind when it comes to the value of this particular asset, right, is two things. First, liquidity, and second, legacy. Is, in my opinion, how the book kind of split it up, right? The liquidity question, they did a good job of putting a wet blanket on our hopes and dreams of buying art that is incredibly valuable, is going to make us tons of money, and we are going to go, laughing to the bank, right? This was a book that was kind of for art purists in the sense that they have kind of a virtue behind the idea of buying art, right? He argued a lot in the book about buying art that you'll enjoy in your space, buying art that you have researched, that you follow the artist, that you are enthusiastic about acquiring, that you're not trying to just cut a deal and, kind of undercut the value when you're buying from a seller and then trying to turn a profit later. So, I mean, for our purposes, we do talk about acquiring assets and making sure that they're valuable, but I did appreciate that he talked about that. So there's that. And so when I say liquidity, I mean things that can be turned into cash very quickly. There was a part in the previous chapter that talked about the lack of liquidity when it comes to selling art, how it takes, anywhere from months to years to, fully offload an asset like that. So we do have to keep that in mind if we're trying to think about it from a portfolio standpoint. Okay. Then when I say legacy, again, he's talking about acquiring art so that you build a collection, one that you can be proud of, one that you can show off, all that good stuff. And so when he talked about that in the chapters, the final chapters, I think that he did a good job of covering that point. Then the second thing he talked about, and this is starting on page, 310 in my book. Let me get to it. Yes. So he started the chapter talking about negotiating, right? And so the chapter is called Negotiate the Buy. And one of the things that he was talking about as you're, developing a relationship with the seller, as you are negotiating your price, right? The quote says, the seller develops a good idea of the most you are willing to pay, and you get a feel for the least he or she is willing to accept. So I thought that was a good way of describing the dynamic that's at play when you're negotiating, and with anything, not just art, right? It talked about proper bargaining etiquette, do's and don'ts. I won't go into detail. However, I think that section really talks about the idea of negotiation, or bargaining as it's called in the art community, versus and getting, kind of a good buy, right? Versus insulting the seller with a low ball offer and things of that nature. Okay. And then let's see. What else did it say in that section? On page 319. So this is in chapter 23, Make the Buy. It's finally gets to the point, right? 300 more pages in, we finally get to the point where we're like, all right, I'm ready to get the art. Talk to me. And so it talked about how you can set up payment plans. That's an option. But usually those are 3 months or less. You want to respect the agreement there. And you certainly don't want to buy art that you can't afford. And then it talked on page 319 about documenting your purchase, right? So the first document you need is a receipt. The second is the form of a certificate of authenticity, so the COA that we talked about in chapter 15, a condition report, right? So just kind of something describing the condition of the art, and just a statement from the seller that, that we do agree that, there was a tear here or stain there or anything like that of that nature, right? And then the last thing you'll need is an unconditional money back guarantee, which I was relieved to hear that that's something that you can, demand from someone that you're getting your art from, especially after going through the chapter about the forgeries and scams and things like that. To not have a money back guarantee is you in danger, girl. And then it said sellers must take full financial responsibility for all statements they make about the art they sell. So along with the core documents go, and this is in a kind of a file that you're, building, right? You want to include also relevant gallery or artist correspondence, relevant articles or publications, exhibition catalogs, invitations to openings, and so on. And then it goes on to talk about all the other interesting things that you can go ahead and save to document the kind of what we talked about in previous chapter, provenance, right? So that's the kind of pedigree that your art carries. And then it also talked about return and exchange arrangements as well. And then on page 325, when again, it goes into detail about how your paper trail needs to, help you cover your butt, right? So when galleries make consignment sound like a sure thing, like you can cash in your art at any time, usually with profit, call them on it. Insist that they put their promises in writing and guarantee those returns, right? So, of course, it says, well, no gallery would do that, right? And he's like, yeah, that's the point. You don't need to count on being able to resell it at the price that you paid for it, unless you've done some significant homework and also you've got a feel for the market. Hey, those who are joining us, I see some new people, so come on in. We are on the chapter "Make the Buy," and then it mentions the sentence that I feel like drove the point home, which is, no one can predict the financial future of any art or artist. The passage of time is the ultimate determinant of how easy, difficult, or impossible reselling your art under any circumstances might be, right? So you might think to yourself, like, oh, I'm going to go and I'm going to buy this art, but I think, maybe a couple of years from now, I might want to sell it. I think it's going to be valuable. There is no guarantee, but you can, do your due diligence to make sure that you're buying something valuable, and that has the potential to increase in value. We've talked extensively about it in the previous streams, so go ahead and take a look at those if you're just joining in. But yes, that is something that was mentioned. So the last final thought that I will leave you on is the part that says, when you buy art, be pretty sure you like it, pretty sure you can afford it, and pretty sure you're going to keep it. And that goes back to my point about liquidity versus legacy. So that is, kind of the culmination of the book. And I think also, if we talk about liquidity and legacy, we also need to talk about taste versus risk tolerance, because I think that when it comes to art, right, it's a fine art, right, of how to acquire it, how to make sure that it is worth something in the market, and that you have enough expert opinions to kind of justify the buy, right? And then when it comes to risk tolerance, again, thinking about, are you trying to get it just because you're going to turn around and resell it and you want to make a profit, or are you trying to get it because you love it and you can't live without it and you want it in your space? That's something to consider. I think personally, just my personal opinion, I would love to have some fine art in my space that I can use as a conversation point when guests come to my house, and I can say, hey, yeah, this artist, let me tell you about them. Let me, show you some of their work. Let me pull up their biography, all that good stuff. It has value when it comes to acquiring art as an asset. And some of it is not necessarily, material. It's not necessarily tangible, but it is something that will make your soul sing, right? So I think just going back through the book, just tons of information. There are practical things that we didn't cover just because, for the sake of time, I like to keep these streams a little bit shorter, so like under 20-25 minutes. But having this book as a resource in your library, in your personal collection, I think is really good, because when it comes time for you to have a financial windfall and you've got money to spare and you are like, okay, I finally want something to curate my space, to add value to my portfolio, all that good stuff, to maybe pass down to my children or my children's children and all that good stuff. This book is going to be, I think, the definitive resource. So there you go. And you guys can let me know in the comments what you thought about the book, what you thought about my assessment about the book, and also, what you're looking forward to in terms of your plans to buy art in the future, in the near future or far future or whatever. I think it adds, some a lively discussion in the comment section. So don't be afraid. Yeah. Okay. So we have covered 2 books so far, right? Those books were selected because of input from you guys. They were selected because I had a particular curiosity about certain things. And I think that they were kind of low level. Like, here's the entry point into some, assets that might be a little bit more attainable for someone who doesn't necessarily have, gobs and gobs of money, right? But here's the thing. I posted a video. It's a short. It's on my YouTube channel, What Brooke Spent. And on it, I talked about margin, right? And the idea that you get more coming in than you have going out. There's a gap between it, a space, right? Breathing room, if you will. And one of the things that I talk about in my content is growing and protecting your wealth. One of those protections is protection against excessive taxation. We've talked in previous streams about the taxation of, assets such as intellectual property, right, and how they're taxed as royalty income as opposed to, just W-2 earnings and things like that. And I thought to myself, like, oh, we should really be learning proactively about taxation, and that's where this book comes in. So, the book for December, I had to think, what's next month? I mean, it's a blur at this point. But so the next book is going to be Taxes 101. I looked high and low for a book that would succinctly and not try to kind of get into the weeds or get too nerdy. I just wanted something that would give us the context of okay, how did certain tax laws and parts of the tax code come into being? What were their purpose when they were introduced by our legislators, our leaders in government and things like that? This book, I feel, is going to be a real treat for us because it's going to be our entry into thinking about taxation from a proactive standpoint. Now, I must say the disclaimer, I am not a tax professional. And I am not advising you what to do with your taxes, but we are going to learn together about, again, the context of sheltering the income that you make, whether that be from capital gains or, your W-2 income or, a special project or, gifts, all that good stuff. We are going to talk about taxes. And I'm so excited. Let me know in the comments if this is yes, I'm on board. Okay. Hey, Caitlin, welcome back. Caitlin has been one of our strongest participants in the book club over the last eight streams, and I really appreciate her for being here. She's dynamite, and she gave us some lovely commentary in the last stream about Banksy and art, the street art, and all that good stuff. So yeah, you're in for a treat with those comments. So thank you, Caitlin, for signing in and letting us know that you're here. Really appreciate you. So that is the backstory for how I chose the next book. And I wanted to direct you to a couple of resources. The first being the Spotify playlist. So I made sure that the Taxes 101 was available on the Spotify playlist. That you just search Secure the Bag Book Club and it'll pop up. You'll see it's by Brooke B. And go ahead and save that playlist. It's also linked in the description. And just go ahead and save that playlist, and you'll have access to the previous books that we've been discussing, as well as the December read. So there's that. Also, logistically, the schedule and the link to the book is going to be book of the month is going to be on my events page on my website. You can find that by going to my profile and searching it there, or I will also leave a link in the description as well. And let's see, that's pretty much it. I'm so excited that you guys could join me on this ride as we learn together about acquiring assets and growing and protecting our wealth, and ultimately getting us ready for the great wealth transfer, which I will talk in more detail in future comment. But for now, so happy that this is what we're doing. Caitlin says, cannot wait to go to the Spotify to see it book club. Love it. And she put heart eye emojis. I love it. Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us, everyone. And I will talk to you on the next stream. See you next Wednesday, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And don't forget, tell the others.